There was a time when I once said I could never see my partner with somebody else. I would be far too jealous. Now, when I said this conversation, it was over 10 years ago, and a lot has changed since then. My name is Rosie Kay, and I am an open relationship coach and swinger lifestyle expert. But many people are very surprised when they hear that my initial reaction was one of defensiveness, of hostility, of negativity, and ultimately of fear. And I'm no different to anybody who is watching this video, who has on their lifestyle journey, who has been to a swimming club, who has had the conversation, who's thinking about the conversation. I know how scary it can be. And when I first started on my journey, I was very scared indeed. I did not want to see my partner with somebody else. And in this video, I'm going to be talking a little bit about my experience of what that was like, my initial reaction. And I'm also going to be talking about some of the emotions that arise, and certainly some of the emotions that I experienced and what I did to understand them. And also how you can gain some understanding if you are the person who's asking your partner or if you're on the receiving end of that conversation. So, let's begin. As I said, I'm no different to anybody who is watching this video. And years ago, when I had the shall we start swinging conversation with a previous partner, my initial thought process did sound a little bit like this. I'd never be able to see him with anybody else. I would be far too jealous. And that thought was closely followed by another one, which was, what if I see him enjoying something with somebody else, and he's enjoying it more than he would with me? That was a big fear of mine. I was doubtful that I would get any pleasure or, any enjoyment from being in that type of scenario with him. And why would I? Because up until that point, I, like many of the other thousands of people out there who have perhaps had the conversation, was convinced that seeing my partner with somebody else was a step too far. And the minute I saw that intimacy or that interaction between them, my world would crumble and I would be left relationshipless, manless, and heartbroken. Now, I can confidently say that this didn't happen. In fact, quite the opposite happened. And whilst it didn't turn me on per se in that moment, what it did do was make me realize that intimacy with other people in that setting is all it is. And yes, the other person was enjoying it. And yes, he was enjoying it too. But what it didn't mean is that all the love he had for me was suddenly withdrawn from our relationship. It wasn't suddenly all sucked out of our relationship in a giant kind of vacuum cleaner. And it didn't mean that I suddenly felt differently towards him. And in fact, it had very little impact on our relationship at all. And I think this is one of the biggest things which I didn't realize. Yes, he enjoyed it. Yes, she enjoyed it. Yes, it was kind of nice to be able to facilitate that. But afterwards, it was all kind of normal. And it didn't really have too much, as I said, of an impact physically or emotionally. Now, when you're in this situation, when you're on the receiving end of this conversation, when you're exposed to new kind of ideas which frighten you, which scare you, which make you feel vulnerable, sometimes we have mixed emotions about it. And having mixed emotions is absolutely fine. A topic I often talk to my coaching clients about is that it's okay to not know how you feel about something. because sometimes we don't know how we feel about something because we haven't experienced it. And sometimes we are torn between wanting to get involved or wanting to our partners to enjoy something, but also having reservations and fears. And this was very much the place that I was at. And sometimes, if we've never experienced a situation, how can we know how we will respond? We only have what society deems as appropriate, or perhaps past experiences, or our fears and worries to base it on. And these can sometimes be very unrealistic. I've learned and begun to appreciate over the years that in some situations we respond according to how we've been conditioned to respond. So let me explain. I believe we've been conditioned by society to believe in and practice monogamous relationships, which is fine. I'm not against monogamy. And whilst I can't change this, I can't go out, I don't kind of make it my mission to banish monogamy or say all the things which I think are wrong about it. We've also been taught that any kind of threat to our relationship must be fought off. And sometimes our initial reaction to anything or anyone that we deem threatening or disruptive to our monogamous lives is met with jealousy and hostility. Essentially, we don't know how to respond as we haven't been taught or even allowed to consider that there are other ways to live. Even if we are not on board with it ourselves, we haven't even been given the space to contemplate that there are other ways to live, or the education about it, or the access to, talking about it, or the opportunity perhaps to share and talk about it. We're only really taught about monogamy. So I understand how we can suddenly jump on the defensive, as I did when I thought about seeing my partner with somebody else. Now, one of the things which really came up for me straight away was jealousy. And I used to be incredibly jealous, and jealousy was certainly something which was at the foremost of those emotions and that conversation. What I want to tell you is that it's okay to be jealous. Jealousy is an entirely natural behavior, and it's apparent in all types of relationship, whether you are monogamous or not. Accepting that jealousy is a natural emotion is the first step, and not letting it define you is the second. Remember, it's how we respond to jealous situations, not jealousy itself, that causes the upset. By acknowledging it, accepting it, and moving forward, we don't have to let jealous emotions overwhelm us and dominate our involvement in the lifestyle. When previous partners have confided in me that they have felt jealous, we've discussed it, explored it, and found a solution. Sometimes part of dealing with jealousy is verbalizing your thoughts and listening to your partner's response, and also providing an environment where we can talk about jealousy without fear of repercussion, without fear of upset, because ultimately jealousy stems from vulnerability. And if you can open a dialogue that comes from a vulnerable place and your partner is receptive to that, they may not like what they're hearing, but if they are receptive to that, then that is a great building block for having a good dialogue within your relationship. Now, jealousy and envious thoughts, they stem from self-comparison and insecurity. There will always be individuals around us who make us feel insecure, but they only have a minimal impact on the life that you lead. And this is what I'm referring to when I think back to seeing my partner with somebody else. They only have a very minimal involvement in our life and our relationship together. And that kind of intimacy that they experienced together had very little impact on the bigger picture. It didn't mean that he suddenly loved me less or that he wanted to be with her more. It didn't really mean anything other than right there in that moment, we were both involved in something with somebody else, without necessarily being intimate together. And that was it. Moving on, let's talk about insecurity, because insecurity is another part of jealousy, and it's certainly something which I experience. So there will always, as I said, there will always be individuals around us who make us feel insecure, but they do only have a minimal impact on the life that we lead. If we are a fantastic person with a kind heart and lots of qualities, you have no reason to be jealous about other people who have perhaps one or two other things which you don't possess. Insignificant factors such as a person with larger physical attributes, I'm going to say, or more charm than you, or who are a size smaller than you, or 5, 10 years younger than you, that's all they are. That's what they have. They're not you, essentially. And yes, we all feel insecure and we all feel nervous about other people. But this is why we have rules and boundaries in place when we're enjoying the lifestyle, to protect ourselves. So we don't put ourselves or our partners in situations that might be detrimental to them or us. So an example of this is if you feel insecure or you feel worried about other people reaching out to your partner with messages on online swinger sites, or couples or singles sending them messages on, say, WhatsApp groups, you can perhaps implement a rule that states you only chat together, or you both have access to whatever account that is, so you can join in the conversation and not feel excluded from them, and kind of making sure that everybody is included in that nobody is left out is a good way to manage this insecurity. And again, if it's when you're meeting with people in clubs, in person, and you're physically kind of meeting with them, not playing with people who are less than a certain age is one thing which a lot of couples do implement, because they do feel quite insecure about playing with people who are 10 15 years younger than them. So sometimes having those rules and boundaries in place is really important, and it just kind of supports us and helps our journey through the lifestyle. But sometimes recognizing that you need some rules and boundaries in place, and you need to put something in place to kind of give you that little bit of comfort and that little bit of security, is absolutely fine. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope it's given you a little bit of insight into emotions that can arise, but also how to overcome them when you are thinking about venturing to a swimming club or seeing your partner with somebody else, and the realities of what that can be like. If you'd like to find out more about this topic, then you can do over on my site, ThisKindaGirl.co.uk. I have a dedicated blog article where I explore this topic in a lot more detail. It's called "What is it like seeing your partner with someone else?" and it's available to read for free over on the site. And I shall see you all next time for another video.